Ashes at the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967, it was clear Jimmy's incendiary guitar playing had finally converted the American audience to his electric vision, and it had been a long time coming. James Marshall Hendrix was born in Seattle, Washington on November 27, 1942. Jimmy first took up the guitar in his early teens, religiously jamming to blues heroes Muddy Waters and Robert Johnson. He played in local bands until dropping out of high school and joining the Army, where he formed the King Casuals, a group he remained with after his discharge in 1962, when he suffered injuries in a parachute drop. For the next 4 years, Jimmy cut his teeth backing the likes of Little Richard, Sam Cooke, and Curtis Mayfield, until forming Jimmy James and the Blue Flames. In July of 1966, while jamming in Greenwich Village, Jimmy's sensational act caught the attention of Chaz Chandler, then bassist for British Invasion Biggie's The Animals. Chandler convinced Jimmy to move to England and try his luck there. Employing the talents of session-men bassist Noel Redding and drummer Mitch Mitchell, the Jimi Hendrix Experience debuted at the Paris Olympia. Jimmy was an instant star. His flamboyant, fuzz-driven, feedback-laced, psychedelic reinterpretation of the blues pushed the limits of rock and dazzled English audiences. Jimmy's incredible prowess made immediate fans of London luminaries Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, John Lennon, and Paul McCartney, who regularly made the scene to witness the Experience's outrageous shows. Hendrix had truly conquered England, and it was now time to return to America and convert its blossoming youth culture. The Monterey Pop Festival in June of 1967 was set to be rock and roll's ultimate showcase and the virtual centerpiece of the Summer of Love. At Paul McCartney's insistence, the Experience immediately was booked to play. Hitting the stage after a breathy introduction by Rolling Stone Brian Jones, the Experience went into overdrive. Jimmy assaulted, humped, stroked, caressed, and ritually set his guitar on fire, leaving the audience astounded, aghast, and ultimately believers. Jimmy took the States by storm, finding huge success with such hits as Purple Haze and The Wind Cries Mary. Albums Are You Experienced, Access Bold as Love, and Electric Ladyland were accepted as trailblazing masterpieces. In 1969, Hendrix broke up the Experience and sought retreat in the small town of Liberty, New York. Reunited with an old Army buddy, Billy Cox, on bass and Mitch Mitchell on drums, Hendrix appeared that year at Newport and closed 1969's Woodstock Festival with an esoteric counterculture rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner. It was evident that Hendrix's most innovative material was yet to come. Sadly, Jimi Hendrix's brief, majestic career ended on September 18, 1970, when he suffocated on his own vomit as a result of acute barbiturate intoxication. He was only 27 years old. Little Johnny Allen Hendrix was born into a world at war at 10:15 a.m. on November 27, 1942, at Seattle's King County Hospital. For his mother, the former Lucille Jeter, barely 18 and in delicate health, it was hardly a time for celebration. With no money, no home to go to, and her newlywed husband off to war, Johnny was about to be launched onto a treadmill of instability that would mark his childhood and color much of his adult life. Meanwhile, James Allen Hendrix, a private in the U.S. Army based in Alabama, was in the stockade when news came about his firstborn son.
I was going to try and get a furlough to go home, see, well, commanding officer told me, he said, well, Hendrix said, you won't be able to go home. He said, because, well, transportation was slow then. They weren't flying anybody then like they do now. I remember after chow one evening, you know, right after I cleaned up my mess gear and so on, so they come over there and they named all the guys that were going through the stockade that night, and here I was one of them. I said, what the heck I'm going to the stockade for? Sergeant was taken down there. He said, I don't know. They said, just general principles, I guess.
In fact, it was 3 years later before Al was finally discharged and made his way to California to pick up his son, who'd been in the care of a friend of Lucille's mother, a kindly woman named Mrs. Champ.
Jimmy, he went from different ones here. Because his grandmother couldn't very well take care of him. And his aunt, she with having kids also. So, because I know several people told me, said, well, they're taking care of him kind of partially. Like, the woman, she wrote me a letter and told me, she said, now, I want you to keep this letter because we all done fell in love with him, and they feel like, well, he's part of the family. And, but I want you to have this letter so you can show, so there won't be no controversy, no kind of way, shape, or form. And they said, she said, I know you want your son. Well, he was glad to see me, because this woman, her name was Champ. That's the Champ, I think. Yeah, I mean, I know she would have been she would have raised him properly.
Lucille, wild, young, and clearly not ready for motherhood, had begun drinking heavily and had taken to running around with a bad crowd that included a notorious abuser named John Williams. Williams often beat Lucille so badly that she eventually ended up in the hospital. As for Johnny, the frequent moves from one cold, damp boarding house to another inevitably took their toll. Back in Seattle, Al reunited with Lucille and promptly changed his son's name to James Marshall Hendricks. Marshall, in memory of Al's brother Leon Marshall, who had died in 1932. Together, the family settled down, and for the first time in his young life, Jimmy enjoyed the love and affection of a real family. His paternal grandmother, Nora Hendricks, recalls Jimmy's seemingly ordinary disposition.
He used to like to play. Well, I never knew him to what all he would do. I never knew whether he would get into mischief too much or not. I didn't hear nobody say a whole lot about, like the youngsters getting into devilment down the street and all that. But he loved to play ball and, boy stuff, but I don't know whether he was, much for. I never heard nobody saying that he come bothering them about this or, doing a whole lot of things. If they did, well, they never said nothing to me about it.
By the time Jimmy had started kindergarten, the Hendrickses had moved into the Rainier Vista housing project, and things were beginning to look up. Always a quiet, sensitive youngster, he now became painfully shy and withdrawn, to the point of developing a devastating stutter. As a young child, he picked up the spoons from his father, and by the age of 8 had become obsessed with strumming on the household broom, pretending to stroke chords on it while singing Elvis Presley songs like Heartbreak Hotel and Love Me Tender. Just as Jimmy was beginning to express himself, he suffered yet another blow. This one would haunt him the rest of his life. His mother, Lucille, newly married to a longshoreman in December of 1957, had been in and out of hospital suffering from cirrhosis of the liver. Jimmy often snuck off to see her, proudly showing her artwork he'd done in school. Early in 1958, Lucille was once again back in the hospital, seriously ill. This time, Jimmy's Aunt Pat, Al's sister down from Vancouver, took her nephew to see his mother. Jimmy was very quiet and simply stared. It was the last time that he would ever see his mother. Jimmy would often tag along with his father to all-night card games with the boys. As luck would have it, one of Al's poker-playing cronies had an acoustic guitar, which became Jimmy's obsession. He'd sneak the guitar out onto the porch, lost in another world, until it was time to go home. Young Jimmy was listening to every blues record he could lay his hands on: Howlin' Wolf, B.B. King, and the legendary Robert Johnson. Slowly, painstakingly, he would pick away at the guitar, trying to imitate the sounds he heard.
He offered to sell to Jimmy for $5, something like that. Jimmy, he wanted to try it out, so I did okay. So I went and bought that for him. And after he started learning a few things on that and got pretty good on that, well, then I got him the electric guitar. But I was just thankful that he was doing something. I mean, to stay out of trouble off the streets and stuff. And that was one thing. And I said, well, you got any interest in this music? I said, that's great. But at the time when I bought his first guitar, I went and bought the C melody sax. I happened to see it sitting there. And neither one of us knew. Well, Jimmy, he probably knew more about the guitar than I know about the sax. I just knew the scale. And in this hotel where we were living at, well, we just sit up there and he'd be plunking away and I'd be blowing on the sax there trying to pick out notes of our own. Oh, he used to practice every day. When he'd come home from school, the first thing he'd do, he'd pick up the guitar. I'd come in from work and he'd be playing B.B. King and them guys. And he'd be playing along with them or getting ideas from it or stuff and such. But he'd be practicing all the time. Well, he had a nickname. The aunt gave him when he was small. It was Buster, and that stuck with him for a long time. I'd got home from work and they were having a little nip, and of course Jimmy wasn't drinking, he was too young. But he told me, he said that someday you're gonna take it easy, you're gonna be famous and all that. So I told him I'll hurry up. I said, oh, Dad's getting tired of work. Brother and I, we had laughed, all three of us laughed about it.
Jimmy joined his first group in 1959, the Rocking Kings, formed by high school friend Fred Rollins, where Hendrix played bass on a 6-string guitar. The group's first gig was in Kent, just outside of Seattle, at the National Guard Armory. We earned 35 cents apiece, Hendrix recalled. Unfortunately, his prowess on the guitar did not match his accomplishments in the classroom. Apart from sports and his art classes, Jimmy was a poor, disinterested student at Garfield High. Frequent absenteeism and an all-consuming interest in music finally led to Jimmy's dropping out of Garfield in October of his senior year. Life in the real world, Jimmy quickly discovered, was not the stuff of his high-flown fantasies. Jimmy tried to get a job as a bag boy at a local grocery store, among other jobs, but according to Al, that was before the civil rights thing and it was hard for blacks to get into certain positions. Because I didn't have a cent in my pocket, recalls Hendrix, I walked into the first recruiting office I saw and just went into the Army. On May 31st, 1961, he was bussed off to Fort Ord, California for 8 weeks of basic training. Life in the service proved an initially heady experience for the new recruit, assigned to the 101st Airborne Division at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. His service experience, however, was most remembered for his initial meeting with bass player Billy Cox. Hendrix and Cox became the nucleus of 2 top service groups, one a 5-piece band called the King Casuals, the second a trio that played the service clubs and army bases throughout North and South Carolina. It was Jimmy's weekend passes to Nashville, however, that opened a whole new musical spectrum. This was the honky-tonk capital of the world, one totally alien yet endlessly fascinating to this sheltered Seattle native. In July of 1962, discharge papers in hand, Jimmy headed for nearby Clarksville, where 2 months later Billy Cox joined him, and together they reformed the King Casuals to work the Nashville nightclub circuit. To make ends meet, they backed artists with names like Nappy Brown, Schoolboy, and Ironing Board Sam.
Well, the main thing, when he got out of the Army, he had an old guitar that his daddy had bought him. And he was traveled. He didn't write for his daddy to send him no money to come home on. He was way down south and all around, down wherever it was they let him out. And he would come on playing this old guitar wherever he could.
Here, in an exclusive never-before-heard interview, Jimmy chronicles his own difficult trek through the honky-tonks and dance halls of the Deep South to the first faint glimmer of success he found in the underground clubs of New York.
I was in the Army for about 13 months, because I got tired of that. It was very boring. And so I pretended that I hurt my back, and I really did break my ankle, so I got out like that, So I started playing around all over the South. We had a band in Nashville, Tennessee. And I got tired of playing that because, they don't want to move anywhere. They just want to stay there. So I started traveling around. I went to New York and won first place in the Apollo Amateur Contest, $25. So I stayed up there, starved up there for about 2 or 3 weeks. And then I got Isley Brothers asked, the Isley Brothers asked if I like to, play with them. So I played with them for a while. and got very bored, because you get very tired of playing behind other people all the time. So then I quit them in Nashville somewhere. And went with this guy who was on a tour with B.B. King, Jackie Wilson, and Sam Cooke, and all these people, Chuck Jackson. So I was playing guitar behind a lot of the acts on the tour. And then I got stranded in Kansas City because I missed the bus, So I was in Kansas City, Missouri, and didn't have any money. And so, this group came up and brought me back to Atlanta, Georgia, where I met Little Richard and I started playing with him for a while. I guess I played with him for about 6 months, about 5 or 6 months. And I got tired with that, played some shows with Ike and Tina Turner. And I went back to New York and played with Kane Curtis and Joy D. I was playing, but all the time I was playing behind these different groups. And I played with this little rhythm blues group named Curtis Knight and the Squires. And I made a few records, arranged a few songs for him. And I just got tired, man. I just couldn't stand anymore. So I just went down to the village and got my own little group together named the Rain Flowers. He had 2 names, the Rain Flowers and the Blue Flame, Any one of those names was all right.
Chaz Chandler, bassist for the Animals, was in New York on a farewell tour, and on the lookout for acts to manage along with his partner Michael Geoffray, following the group's disbanding. After Jimmy's set, Chandler promptly sat the guitarist down and told him, "Look, I believe you'll be a sensation in England. If you agree, I'll pay for your fare to London, look after you, and manage your affairs." "If you take me to England, will you take me to meet Eric Clapton?" asked Jimmy, apparently the clincher that sealed the deal.
He was playing at, I think, Cafe Wall when Charles Chandler discovered him. Well, he's seen him several times, but Jimmy called me from London. Jimmy was doing okay there, and all of a sudden here I get this call from London, and I said, "Daggum," I said, "Who's this? I don't know nobody in London." And here was Jimmy's voice, and he told me, he said, "I'm over in London, Dad." He said, "Well, I think I'm on the way to the big time now." He said, "This guy wants to build a group around him." He said, "You're going to call it the Jimi Hendrix Experience." And he said, "The way I spell the name Jimmy is J-I-M-I." I said, "Well, that's all right." Oh, he'd tell me what he's going to do. He's going to get me this and get me that. He'd buy a home. I told him, I said, "Well, I'm sure happy for you. Just keep your nose clean." I said, "Dad's doing okay. Don't worry about it." I said, "You did do okay."
Within days of their arrival in London, Chandler kept his promise and arranged for Jimmy to not only meet Clapton, but jam with him in the newly formed Cream at Regent Polytech. Jack Bruce, Cream's passionate bassist, remembers his initial encounter with Jimmy and the now legendary jam.
I was in a pub opposite the art school having my pre-gig pint, and this person came up to me. He said, "Oh, hello, I'm Jimi Hendrix. I'd like to sit in with the band." And I said, "Well, people don't usually do that."
Ever heard of him?
No, never. I said, "Well, people don't usually do that, but, you're welcome, but you'll have to ask the other guys," which he did. Then he sat in, and he blew us away. Jimi Hendrix wasn't a 3-piece. It was Jimi Hendrix with a couple of guys. Could have been anybody.
Yeah, that's true.
No disrespect to Noel or Mitch, both good friends of mine. But Jimmy, I always thought was like a carry-on from the Delta blues.
Sort of psychedelic Robert Johnson.
Yeah, if you like, yeah. And I loved him, but he certainly blew us away that night. Whether it was through playing the guitar with his teeth or what.
And did he do all that?
He did, yeah, he did. But he also played brilliantly. I think I've got a tape of the next day. We were rehearsing for a record where Eric is trying to play like Jimmy and failing miserably.
Here, Ginger Baker reveals his first run-in with Hendrix.
And Jimmy has met Jack and Eric without me being around. So I've arrived at a gig, and Jack's come up to me and gone, "Hey man, Jimi Hendrix is here. He wants to sit in with us." You see, And I go, who the fuck's Jimi Hendrix, man? He went, Jack said, he's this great guitar player, this great American guitar player. I said, yeah, but we've got a guitar player. You know, Eric's a guitar player. What do we want the guitar player for? Nobody'd ever sang with us before. And for that matter, nobody ever sang with us again afterwards. I mean, it wasn't something, you know, we'd got our own thing. What did we want another guitar player sitting with us for? And he went, yeah, but Chas Chandler's brought him down. Like, he's a friend of Chas Chandler. Chas Chandler's his manager. I knew Chas, right? I said, yeah, man, but really, no, man, it's our band. You know, like, what the fuck? We don't want somebody sitting in with our band. Well, I took some convincing. And I said that, you know, like, sure, he can come and sit in with us, but, like, I mean, Eric's not going to go off and leave him with the band. Like, they both got to play. So anyway, Jimmy appeared on the stage and started to play. And he was playing quite good, and I was quite enjoying it. Then he started his on-stage showmanship bullshit, you see. Now, to me, our music was enough. We didn't have to get into all sorts of gyrations, pretend to fuck the guitar and play it with your teeth and do all these extraordinary things which he was doing, which, to me, I'm just going, well, man, you know, you lost me at this point. You've lost me. You know, you're into the same sort of thing as the Rolling Stones and the Beatles. For me, Cream's music was so good that we didn't need to do any stage shows, any acting, you know, apart from the occasional great thing like we'd done at the Savile Theatre, just like something to finish the show off with. But we didn't need to do all this thing, and it really left me totally cold. In fact, I had an enormous row with Jack at this particular time about Jimi Hendrix sitting in. And he sat in, and he was a big fan of the band. I mean, he formed his band in exactly the same format as Cream. And in fact, he stopped in the middle of a television show one time and said, oh, enough of all that crap, let's play something good, and started playing Sunshine. And dedicated it to us. He was an enormous fan. Now, I think we've had somebody say that, like, Eric was totally blown away. You see, Jimmy's a fucking great guitar player. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But I don't think he was a better guitar player than Eric at that particular moment in time. Eric was playing streets above him.
Well, he got over there and he played around there and then met up with some other fellows, you know, the English fellows they were. He was told I met the boys, and each one played different instruments. They, of course, got together, and you know how they get together and practice, and finally they can get themselves all together and be a bunch. Then they get enough, play enough, they can go here and play and go there, you know, and in that way then you get started.
Despite the British Underground's championing of his cause, the Fleet Street tabloids dubbed him the wild man of pop, and club owners wouldn't touch the band. This made it all the more vital to get out a record. Moody Blues founder and latter-day Wings co-commander Denny Lane looks back on the Hendrix he knew.
On the evening, Jimi Hendrix came up to me at the club we went to and said, you know, this is how out of it he was, but he said, hey man, I really like your guitar player. I said, I was the guitar player. But anyway, you know, up to that point, Jimmy had always been a bit cagey with me because he didn't really know who I was, and yet I was always sitting around the same table, you know, at different clubs. He used to look at me a little bit weird, but from that point on, we became really good friends.
In November, Jimmy, Noel, and Mitch went into Olympic Studios to lay down their first track, Hey Joe. The song was a perfect vehicle for Jimmy's husky voice. So unconfident about his singing abilities was Hendrix that he would have the studio lights dimmed to lay down his vocals in the comforting shadows. Ironically, his slurring rap-like delivery would become the hallmark of the tune.
Jimmy wasn't much of a dancer or a singer. Like he always said to me, first time when he started singing, he was playing somewhere back east with different groups and all such as that. And he told me that. He said, well, I'm going to try some singing, Dad. He says, everybody else is doing it. He says, I can't hardly carry a tune, but then it's a hollering and one thing another. Well, hey, some people mention, oh, I like to hear Jimmy sing. I told Jimmy no sing. That's all right. I tell you that right on. Jimmy will tell you that, boy, he couldn't hold no tune.
On the heels of the success of Hey Joe, the Experience went back into the studio to record their second single, Purple Haze, the revolutionary psychedelic anthem that would become Jimmy's signature tune. The lyrics, written in Hendrix's dressing room in the Upper Cut Club on Boxing Day 1966, suggest a combination of many images. Although the song was carried as a drug banner of the swinging 60s, Chaz Chandler refutes any suggestion that Jimmy was under the influence of LSD when he wrote the tune, and in fact, no one can recall Hendrix taking acid until some 6 months later. The images, by all accounts, were drawn from the mythical Book of the Hopi, which suggests the dawn of creation was born into a purple haze. Always skeptical of the self-serving mainstream media, Hendrix only reluctantly consented to interviews when pushed by his management. Here's a rare example of the kind of tasteless, pointless promotion he had to endure.
Hello, Jim.
Hi.
Jimmy, tell me, how is it an American makes it big first in England?
Well, like I was playing behind different top 40 R&B groups here in the States, for about off and on for about 4 or 5 or 6 years. Just got tired and went to the village and had my own group together, And so Chaz Chandler comes through and asks would I like to come to England. He's seen us down in the village and asked would I like to come to England. So I went over there and Mitch Mitchell, the drummer, Noel Redding, the bass player, and we got together and performed our group. And, it's been happening ever since.
Well, it sure has. What's happening now is we're out of time, sorry to say. Good to have you on the show. Jimi Hendrix Experience.
Okay, take it easy.
Mr. Hendrix remembers the very first time he ever heard his son on record.
I was out there in Queen Anne. Some hippies living next door to us there. And I had happened to hear this record there, and I told the wife, I said, gee, that sounds like Jimmy playing. I don't know, I never heard his record before, but why I had this happening to figure with him. And I guess it's his voice or something. Anyways, she said, well, I'm going to go. She said, why don't you go over next door? I said, oh, heck no. I said, I ain't going to go over there and bother people. So she went over there and come back there with the record. And they came over and all such as that. And they wanted to they gave the record to me. They had just bought the record. And they're so surprised that I was just Jimmy's dad living next door, But when I listened to the record, it was somewhat different what I've been used to Jimmy playing, see. I know he used to play a lot of blues and, well, I know this. And, well, it was kind of a different type of music. And here this was psychedelic music, altogether different. I said, wow. Well, I told him long ago, I said, it's okay copying other people, to a certain extent, maybe a little bit of their style or something. But when you go into music and you do your own thing, regardless of what it is.
By the fall of 1967, Jimmy, Noel, and Mitch were back in Olympic Studios to work on their second album, Axis Bold as Love. The following is a telling interview with Hendrix conducted by a freelance journalist in 1967.
Jimmy, how do you become inspired to play the guitar with your teeth?
I feel like putting the guitar down and stepping on it, I'll do it if I feel like it,
Have you done that?
Oh, yeah, we go around, there's some of the different things we do, and nothing is never the same each night, even if it's a bad night or a good night. Everything's always different. This is more improvised, we're almost like a free free feeling, you know. And everything we do, like playing with our teeth or with our elbows and all that, it's just like because we feel like it right that particular moment.
How do you feel when people say that you're the newest thing in pop?
There's so many different outlets, you know. We have many different things. Like Hey Jules, it's one little, about 100, you know, of our feelings. We like it, that's why we recorded it, you know. But we have so many different other sounds, you know, that we just barely begun.
Well, how was your show here at Tiffany Gardens in Stockholm?
Oh, you know, the PA system was very bad. And the audience didn't really help us too much, you know. But I think it was all right later on. And the second job we did later on that night was very, very good. It's a little easier working indoor. You know, it's all right working outside if the PA system is, you know, all right. You know, if the amplifiers and everything's, you know, set up nice. I first at the Savile, you know, we used. I had this gadget on the guitar that every time I hit a certain note, you know, the lights would go up. You know.
So, Jimmy, what are your immediate plans?
We're going to the States around. I think we're going to leave about the 10th or the 12th of June. And, you know, we're going to play at the Monterey Pop Festival. And then we have about 4 days at the Fillmore Auditorium. And then, you know, you have this TV and all this other stuff in between.
Did you play many clubs when you first got to England?
No, we didn't do too much. You know, I couldn't work too much because I didn't have a work permit. So what they had to do was line up a lot of gigs. So when we did one of the first jobs we ever did was we had about 4 hours practice. And Johnny Halliday asked would we like to come to, you know, play at the Paris Olympia with him, and we did. After being together only about 4 days, and after having about 4 hours of practice. And so we came back, you know, we recorded Hey Joe around December. You know, but we couldn't work too much because of the, you know, I had to get enough jobs to have a long work permit so I could stay in England longer. On the new LP and, you know, the last 2 records I wrote myself. You know, we write our own stuff now.
Now, you've been compared to Dylan. What do you think about that?
Well, you know, whatever they want to do, you know, because I don't know who I am. It seems like, you know, because I've been living with myself for about 21 years, so I don't know, really, you know, so, you know, I don't care who they compare me with, actually.
In The Wind Cries Mary, you sing the phrase, traffic lights turn blue tomorrow. What were you thinking there?
Oh, yeah, well, like the traffic lights turn to blue tomorrow. That means, like, tomorrow's, everything's going to be, you know, blue. Blue means feeling bad, you know. In other words, like, first, if you do your everyday things, like go across the street or something like that, instead of the traffic lights being red and green, will just be blue, because, you know, in your mind, because it's just another story about a breakup, you know, just a girl and boy breaking up, that's all. Like you say something like that, but you mean, you know, it just means something else, you know. There's no hidden meaning, it's just the way you say it. You just express the words.
Don't you have an album coming out in a week?
Yeah, I hope so. It's named Are You Experienced? And, you know, it has about 3 or 4 different moods. It has a little, you know, rock and roll, it has about 2 rock and roll songs, which you can call rock and roll, you know. And then it has, maybe, you know, it has a blues, and it has a few freak out tunes, you know.
Are you going to be playing any psychedelic stuff?
Yeah, there's 1 or 2 in there. There's the one named All Your Experience is one. You know, that's the name of the, there's a last track on the LP. It's like a, you know, imaginary free-form song where you just use your mind, where you just imagine with your mind, you know. And this other song named Third Stone from the Sun. It's completely imaginable, you know. It's just about these cats coming down and taking over Earth. But then they find out they don't really see anything here that's worth taking, you know, except for chickens, you know.
How did you come up with the sound for the introduction of the Wild Thing?
Oh, it's just, you know, I just turn the amp up very loud, and it's mostly feedback and the way you control the knobs. And the back, because I play a Fender Stratocaster guitar, you know, and you can take the back off, a little small plate, and you can tap the springs. There's little springs back there. And it makes these weird little sounds sometimes.
Now, I've got to ask you this. Aren't you fed up with playing the guitar with your teeth?
Well, you know, I do this when I feel like it, like, you know. I don't consider myself that I have to do it, you know. Because sometimes we don't do it at all. It's just when I feel like doing it. You know, as I try to get straight to them now that it's best not to expect anything from us, you know. It's just, that's just the guilano is, you know, because if you expect something, then you might not see it. Then quite naturally, you're going to be disappointed.
Jimmy, how was your first trip home to America with the group?
It was very nice, you know. It was very good to go back, you know.
Well, what do you think your chances are in the States?
It'll be all right, you know. It's going to be all right, just like over here, you know. So, it's just, America's just like any other country. It just takes a little more time, that's all.
Mitch, what were you doing before you joined the Experience?
I was working with a band in England, a guy called geoffray.
And what about you, Noel?
Long hair? No. Nothing really. I've just been professional for 4 years, jogging around. I was in Germany for a year. That's about all.
What do you see for the future?
We're going to be working on LPs, and we're going to take a vacation, after the Scandinavian tour. We're going to be working on an LP when we come back, and probably, another single or something like that,
What was your inspiration for Midnight Lamp?
It just came to me, that's all, just... Like, when we was recording our last album, LP, I mess around. I can't play no piano, or harpsichord, but anyway, I just picked up these different little notes, and it started from there. Because every time we had an intermission, a rest or something like that, then I'd play this little tune on the harpsichord. So we decided to record it after about 6 months of messing around with it.
Still and all, this follow-up to Are You Experienced demonstrated a more softer, subtle approach filled with dream imagery and flashing colors. Bold as Love, the album's tour de force, a turbulent battle of passions, once again laced with American Indian imagery. Here Jimmy discusses his feelings on the now legendary Access album.
The axis of the earth, if it changes, well, it changes the whole face of the earth, like every few thousand years, And it's like love and a human being, if he really falls in love deep enough, it'll change him, It might change his whole life, so both of them can really go together, I like the inside cover the best, really, Like, they have an Indian painting about us, Well, it's all right, I can hardly wait till the next one comes, though. Next one will be better. We just like to play, and the sound that comes about happens most of the time accidental, Like as you grow older, you change slightly without knowing sometimes, and that's what happens to our music sometimes, And I just don't like one style, really. I like to play maybe country or blues, We're working on different things. We have different tracks laying about, so we'll try to get something. I like to get a brand new song, though, because I've been thinking of some very good songs lately.
In this rare clip, Jimmy remembers the inspiration behind the song Little Wing.
Oh, it's based on a very, very simple American Indian style, very simple. I got the idea like when we was in Monterey, and I was just happened to just looking at everything around. So I figured that I'd take everything I see around and put it maybe in the form of a girl, maybe something like that, and call it Little Wing. In other words, just fly away. Everybody's really flying, and it's really in a nice mood, like the police and everybody's really great out there. And so I just took all these things, just put it in one very, very small little matchbox, into a girl, and then do it. It's very simple, but I like it, That's one of the very few ones I like.
As is often the case with pop stars, Hollywood soon came calling, offering Hendrix numerous, potentially lucrative film roles, all of which he declined.
Oh yeah, we get those, but like we're trying to get like Scandinavia and the continent and Japan, Australia, and America together. We're trying to play all these places, so we don't have time really right now. Oh, I like to play the bad guy, maybe. Mexican bandit, maybe. Yeah, who finally does good at the end. Yeah.
Of the many British pop stars who paid obeisance at the feet of Jimi Hendrix, Rolling Stone guitarist Brian Jones was perhaps the most devout. Stone's driver Tom Keelock recounts Jimmy's close relationship with Brian, as well as Hendrix's first difficult days in London.
He used to loon around Brian's place. In actual fact, Brian said, "Get some bread for me," because he's broke, he's got no money. He had number ones out, but he'd never had any bread, and nobody ever gave him any bread. I give him some. I don't know if he ate a lot. He didn't eat a lot. He was always smoking. In fact, I shot one of the last concerts he'd done was the Isle of Wight on film from a man called Roland Riley. He owned Radio Caroline.
In a rare transatlantic telephone interview, experienced bassist Noel Redding, too, looks back on the band's lean times.
Around those times we were in London, we didn't have much money. Like I remember at some point, Jimmy actually went to Harold Davison, the agency, and had to borrow 500, and Mitch and I once went to Track Records and we were given £600 between us.
By January 4th, 1968, the Experience was winding up a European tour at a stop in Gothenburg, Sweden. Claiming someone had spiked his drink, Jimmy went on a rampage in his hotel room, destroying literally every bit of furniture and cutting his arm severely after smashing it through a window. It took 5 of Gothenburg's finest to finally place the cuffs on him and haul him off to jail, where he was charged with criminal mischief. Here's how Jimmy responded when questioned about the Swedish bust.
No, I really am sorry about that. You know, it's very bad because, you know, this is my favorite country, one of my favorites. I have my little camera here and we film, you know, all the time we're here. Yeah. And, you know, for home movies and all that. And, you know, I really feel bad about it. It'll be better next time, though.
A month later, Jimmy and the band kicked off an American tour at Bill Graham's Fillmore West. From almost the first moment they got together, the Experience were plagued with groundless breakup rumors. This is how Jimmy responded to one such inquiry.
No, it's not really true. You know, I don't know how that got around. But what we're doing, we're going to get ready to do our own individual things. Like, for instance, Noah Redding, he's writing some songs with another person. And, like, you probably see him on stage with his group. And then you'll probably see Mitch with his thing, you know. And then you might even see me with my thing, you know. There's 3 individual things we like to do. But plus, we'll keep the group together because we haven't fully discovered all the sounds and all the things we want to do with the 3-piece group, you know. So I don't know how that got around, but like, I don't plan for us to split. Not really. Not until we really bore ourselves.
Hey, you actually produced your new album of Electric Ladyland, didn't you?
Yeah, well, actually, we was getting our things together in other 2 times, you know, with the Axis and with our Experience. But most of those were like predominantly handled by Chas and all that. But this is the first time we was, you know, I did it by myself completely.
Wasn't it very expensive?
Yeah, it was about $60,000, I guess, you know. Oh, well, yeah, it was really expensive because, like, we was recording and we was playing at the same time, which is very, you know, it's a lot of strain on you. So, therefore, we have to always go back in the studio again and redo what we might have done 2 nights ago, you know. We haven't had a rest since we've been together, you know. And, like, we're going to have to take a rest sometime or another, or else our music's going to come out really, really, you know, bad, or it's not going to come out proper the way we want it to. So you have to have proper rest, and mental rest, too, before you can really create nice sounds and music.
You're going to be jamming with any of your English buddies in the near future?
Yeah, definitely. We like to record some jamming things with a lot of people, you know, especially Hanson and Carlson and, like, Stevie Winwood and, you know, whoever. We're working on more songs that are very hard, but that are very straight to the point, you know. You can always sing about love and different situations of love, but now we're trying to give solutions to all the protests and the you know, arguments that they're having about the world today. So we'll try to give our own little opinions about that in very simple words. You know, anybody can protest, but not too many people can offer a decent answer. So we're going to try to do that. We plan to have Albert Hall, our last job, for a while. Then we're going to settle down and record, you know, some nice things, and then we're going to, you know, like a single and an LP or whichever. I plan to have like 2 LPs really quick together, you know, like maybe about 2 months apart.
Frustrated by his lack of control over the Axis LP, this new Hendrix was eager to flex his artistic muscle, refusing to take advice and spending an entire week to remix a single song some 300 times. Notes Chandler. He wasn't listening anymore. He wanted to go over and over songs, sometimes that he'd gotten on the first take. I just couldn't communicate with him. I felt like an alien. The atmosphere in the studio soon dissolved into a sideshow with dozens of hangers-on regularly turning up. Jimmy was to later comment that Electric Ladyland was dedicated to groupies everywhere. Some groupies know more about music than the guys, he said. Some people call them groupies, but I prefer the term electric ladies. My whole Electric Ladyland album is about them. Ginger Baker confirms Jimmy's near obsession with the opposite sex in this revealing reminiscence.
The Spalding Festival was another time when I came across Jimmy. And on the bill were Cream and Jimi Hendrix, and we were all in this house, which had become our communal dressing rooms, and we all had parts of this house as our dressing rooms. Now, there was some extraordinary goings on in the Hendrix dressing room department, and Mitchell had a Polaroid camera and was taking Polaroids of Jimmy with chicks and then rushing round to show them to everybody, you see. Jimmy actually performing his legendary act, of which he was amazingly adept. During this Spalding Festival, I think I saw Polaroids of Jimmy atop of and in various sexual positions with at least 7 different chicks during this festival.
On the heels of the ambitious recording began the band's summer tour of the States. This was the one where we stopped making music and started doing time, says Redding. Paradoxically, the Experience was at the very height of their popularity, virtually the biggest act in rock, often taking in a cool $100,000 or more per show. In addition, Jimmy had been voted the world's best musician by virtually every trade magazine. Vivian Stanshall, the supremely talented and frankly rather eccentric headmaster of the long-ago Bonzo Dog Doodah Band, remembers Jimmy as a quiet, considerate chap who, despite his eternally precarious finances, was always generous to a fault.
He stayed at my place quite a bit. There's only quite a few people crash around there, and Jim was very courteous and a gentleman, and he, I mean, his stories of turning up at clubs even at the height of his fame and wanting just to sit in with the band very, humbly, quite true. I mean, I was there on several times in New York when he did that, and he'd come over as anonymously as possible with his guitar and sit and have a beer and a natter. And one time in New York, the first tour we did, we were staying down in some hideous hotel in the 30s, and we were literally living on $1 a day, which got us a burger and a beer, and that was that. I remember bumping into dear old Noel Redding, who was crossing town with a carrier bag full of grass. I couldn't believe it. But hey ho, I don't remember the club, but the following morning, having marched up to me and said, "Mr. Stanshall," and I said, "Yes," and he said, "Your car awaits." And I said, "Oh my God, I must have got slush last night." And it was even more horrifying. Outside was the stretched limo with black windows. I mean, God knows. And Jimmy had laid this on for the week for me to boodle around in. And I remember particularly they were called head limousines. And you could press various buttons for TV, drinks and so on, but also there were all sorts of caches and side pockets. I don't drive, so I don't know what you call these damn things, which are full of rolled-up spliffs and joints of various kinds and pills of various kinds. I mean, everything was laid on.
Another friend of Jimmy's, Bonzo Dog alumni Neil Innes, who also spent several years as part of the Monty Python team, recalls his memories of the legendary performer.
I remember having a slash in Los Angeles, and stood alongside Jimi Hendrix. We're talking about the thing, and Jimmy says to me, "We're doing the same thing." I said, "Have you a slash?" "No." That's show business. And, you guys are doing it this way, and I'm doing it my way. Right. And I didn't at the time have the astuteness to think, what a great idea for a song. Well, I only met him that one night, actually, and we went on to a party afterwards, and I remember getting terribly involved with discussions about if the Earth axis actually moves and the poles melt. And
he was a very bright chap, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Wonderful sense of humour. We all got on with it very
Oh,
well.
he's a lovely guy.
Mike McCartney, Beatle Paul's talented younger brother, also found some success in the late 60s as a singer-songwriter. Here he recounts instructing Jimmy on how to play the guitar during a session for one of his many records in Liverpool. His various references to "our kid," by the way, refer to Paul McCartney.
Jimmy comes in, sits down very quiet. We had to finish another. They had to wait for about an hour. I had all this ale, come from Liverpool, I had all this ale lined up for him, beer, whiskey, whatever. for musicians, you see. It was the days before cocaine, hashish, and magic marijuana and heroin through the eyeballs. We used to drink in those days, and beer and whiskey at the table. I offered it to him because he's going to have to wait for an hour. He said, no, it's cool. Went in the studio, sat down very quietly, just playing a little guitar to himself. Very peaceful. And we finished the track, came out, and there he is. Sorry, Jimmy, you know, great. I had this one man of Borneo, lovely, very nice gentleman.
Yeah.
I just sitting there, yeah, okay, great. So what do you want me to do? Oh, yeah, I'm playing in the track. Oh, I see, just this bit. Let's see, yeah, say no more. Be away in 5 minutes, you know. So ready, Jimmy, I'll send in the track, here you go, Graham. We just sat there, suddenly it's... Yeah, man, I mean, what? Bloody hell. And so that was it, you know, great. And our kid said, okay, that do you? I was about to tell Jimmy to go home, and I said, well, it's very amazing. I didn't quite understand it. So I said, very good, but it's not quite, you know, in the right bit, and this doesn't quite fit the song, you see. And our kid said, well, it's all right, you know, it's all right. It's so amazing that, you know, we can take that. And I said, okay, fine. He said, why, do you really want him to try it again? I said, well, it's just like... He said, well, can you explain it to Jimmy? I said, yeah, great, hold on. Went outside, sat with Jimmy on the floor, very patiently. And told him how to play the guitar, right? Listen, Jimmy, here, this is how it goes, in this bit here. And you can do anything in this bit, but... No, I'm just trying to be constructive, you know, just for him to get it right is my worry. So, he said, oh, yeah. Oh, you mean like that? Very lovely, man. Just... I mean, oh, I see. You mean in those bits there? Oh. It's coming back a bit. I think I said, well, you know, it goes doody 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 doody. Honest. And he was going, oh, you mean you got a little tune there? Yeah. You know, it was like goes doody doody doody. Oh, you mean doody 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 down down down. That's right, yeah. Like that, you know. Oh, yeah, I can play that. And he just waited. So we just went through it over and over again. So, okay, next tape. There you go. Roll the tape. Tape up. Roll the tape. And it keeps going on and on and on. Is that nearer? Yeah, nearer. Oh, it's not it. That's not the one. I'll do it again. That's my pleasure. That's what I'm here for. Work. Do you what you want. And he kept doing it. Until he got it right. Right. Quotes right. And I could say, okay, you're happy now. Let's play it back. Before Jimmy comes in, let's play it back. I'll play it back. And I was listening. And it was right. It was boring. And I said, can I apologise? He said, what are you talking about now? I said, you were right. I was wrong. The first take was the one. He said, oh, great, thank you. Good man, thank you, Michael, being a nice little boy. The younger brother, he said, thank you, great. We had to go through all that fucking hours of torture. But thank you, Michael. Tape up, let's hear the first one. First one? What do you mean, first one? Let's hear the first take. Jimmy's the mad one, that beautiful one we all were dancing about in the studio. Delane Lee, London. He says, what do you mean? Oh, there's only one track. I've been wiping everything out. Oh, fucking hell. I didn't have the heart to say, could you do the first one again?
Going into seclusion following the tour, Hendrix emerged with renewed spirits. He had moved to Woodstock, New York with a collective of musicians, including old pal Billy Cox, where he had conceived the latest Hendrix invention, something he called electric church music. Jimmy explained it this way. It's much more than music. It's like church, like a foundation for the potentially lost. We're making music into a new kind of Bible, a Bible you can carry in your hearts. When I get up on stage and sing, that's my whole life. That's my religion. I am electric religion. That summer of 1970, Jimmy hunkered down with Billy and Mitch to produce his most ambitious work yet for the projected double LP First Rays of the New Rising Sun. The exhausting sessions left no time for rest. Manager Jeffries had arranged a brief European tour, kicked off by the Isle of Wight festival known as the last great fling of the British counterculture. Suffering from severe fatigue and depression, and plagued by stubborn technical problems, Jimmy stumbled badly, stopping songs midstream and both playing and singing out of tune. Later that evening, singer Richie Havens recalls an eerie encounter with Hendrix on a fog-laden backcountry road surrounding the festival. "Oh, man, it's just so frustrating. It's Jeffries, you know. I don't trust him. He's trying to keep me in this little box, forcing me to play the same old crap. It's a drag, man." Hendrix was clearly desperately discouraged and unhappy. "That was the last time I ever saw him," recalls Havens.
I really hate to play at night, you know what I mean? Because you can't see him, especially outside. I can see everybody. And that's how I play off of. First of all, the musicians, and then second of all, the audience. I've been doing like Yogi Bear. I've been hibernating. It surprised me that they, want us back here. You know? We play like a whole vacuous, a wall of sound, a wall of feeling. That's what we try to get across. You know what I mean? We haven't been sleeping 2 days. We've been working very hard on other projects too. I've been doing a lot of. Billy Cox, our bass player, has been doing a lot of songwriting. We're starting to really make good contact with each other because we realize how important a friend is in this world. We have a whole LP. And then we have a single called Dolly Dagger. And on the other side of it is Night Bird Flying.
Meanwhile, death eerily seemed to be a favorite topic in his recent talks with reporters. In July, he said, "The next time I go back to Seattle, it will be in a pine box." And while on this tour, he told a journalist, "I've been dead for a long time. I don't think I will live to see 28. Moving on to Sweden and Denmark, where Jimmy enjoyed godlike status, things temporarily got back on track. The attentive, knowledgeable audience allowed him to indulge his more progressive material, and he performed several sparkling shows. Then, just as suddenly, it all unraveled. Germany's Isle of Furman's so-called Love and Peace Festival, which attracted bands like Cream and Sly and the Family Stone, was anything but. In the midst of a howling gale, German Hells Angels went berserk, robbing the box office at gunpoint and going on a shooting spree and inciting a terrifying riot. Confused fans booed and shouted, sending the band fleeing from the stage. Little did Jimmy know, it was the last real concert that he would ever play. The normally quiet and stable Billy Cox had apparently been slipped some bad acid and erupted into a violent, uncontrollable state of manic paranoia. His dear friend now reduced to a catatonic mess, Hendrix quickly hid Billy out in a London apartment, fearing the risk of seeing him institutionalized. Through this strange twist of fate, Jimi Hendrix would never play a proper concert again. By mid-September, Hendrix was regularly jamming at Ronnie Scott's, a popular London jazz club, while blocking out studio time at Electric Lady for his scheduled return to New York. "I want a big band full of competent musicians that I can conduct and write for," Hendrix commented at the time. "Strauss and Wagner are going to form the background of my music. Floating in the sky above it all will be the blues." Jimmy was also keeping steady company with Monika Dannemann, a willowy, blonde German ice skating instructor and artist. Sweet and innocent from a well-to-do Dusseldorf family, she was the very antithesis of the streetwise Devin Wilson. Rumor had it that she and Jimmy had recently become engaged. Hendrix, at long last it seemed, was finally beginning to settle down. On the night of September 17th, 1970, Jimmy returned to Monika's suite at the Samarkand Hotel, late from a party, and took a total of 9 sleeping tablets. The following morning, Monika awoke to find that Hendrix had vomited. Unable to rouse him, she eventually called an ambulance. Inexplicably, the attendants strapped the still-breathing pop star to a chair, with his head falling back, rendering him unable to cough up any obstructions, leading to his senseless suffocation. By the time the ambulance arrived at the hospital just before noon, it was too late. The official cause of death was inhalation of vomit due to acute barbiturate intoxication. Just as he had predicted, Jimi Hendrix had not lived to see his 28th birthday. Ironically, Ginger Baker was one of several people searching for Jimmy the night he died. He remembers.
It came to my ears via the underworld grapevine that there was this guy who was a West Indian who worked at Charing Cross Hospital, had knocked off a couple of bottles of cocaine hydrochloride. Would I be interested? Well, I had lots of money, and he wanted £350 for this bottle, you know, a pharmaceutical bottle, which was about 5 inches deep and about 2 inches or more in diameter, full of cocaine hydrochloride. Sly's at the airport hotel. So I go down to the airport hotel to see Sly, because I'd met Sly and anyway, I knew he'd like some coke. And Mitch turned up at the airport hotel as well. And I remember we were all doing this coke up, and then I said, listen, I'm going to the bathroom for a fix. I've told Mitch about this, how I got this bottle of cocaine hydrochloride. And Mitch has gone, fucking hell, man. Jimmy would really fucking like to get his hands on the other bottle, right? Because I said there's another bottle going for 350 quid. So there's Sly, myself and Mitch running around London looking for Jimmy. We were to go to the Speakeasy. We go to his flat. We go to the Revolution. And we're roaming all over London looking for Jimmy. And we can't find him anywhere. So in the end, we give it up as a bad job, like it's 3 o'clock in the morning and nobody sees Jimmy anywhere. So Sly went back to the airport hotel. I think I dropped him back there, and then I went home.
That next morning, Baker, still pretty high from the previous night's coke binge, sought a much-needed shot of morphine from his physician. It was then he learned of Jimmy's death.
As the morphine took on and I levelled off and calmed down, John gave me the news. He said, have you heard that Jimi Hendrix was found dead last night, or early this morning? And that was when I got the news. It was a pretty shocking event. I'm glad he gave me the morphine before he told me, in fact. And there I was, sort of left with this news that Jimmy, my newfound buddy, because we had become real close, you know, in that few weeks, was no more. Jimmy was drinking heavily this night, as far as I can tell. It was a night where we were all raving heavily, but Jimmy had been drinking heavily and had taken some downers and was in bed and vomited, and of course he suffocated. He suffocated in his own vomit. Totally painlessly, he was on downers. He went to sleep and didn't wake up. He was like, I mean, it was obviously the downers that killed him, because if he had not been on downers, then he would have obviously felt very uncomfortable where he was and would have woken up. And that was the end of Jimmy. A very sad day in rock history, I think.
He just worked himself down, and he wasn't too strong at that. He was born with the kind of they call it tisic. It's something like
TV.
It's almost.
I've told so many people the same thing. That's the reason why this girl Monica, now she wants this book she's come out with, she's going to tell the whole true story about it, because she was there. Yeah, like he strangled on his vomit.
I was in prison when I first heard it. But I heard it before on the radio, at least 3 times over the years, you know, that Jimi Hendrix was dead. Or he shot acid in his eyeball and he died.
What do you mean you heard it before?
I heard it before on the radio. You know, just rumors, stuff like, Jimi Hendrix died, he shot cocaine in his eyeball, and his brain exploded, you know, or something like that. But I tell you something now, Jimmy never shot nothing. I don't care what they tell you. He never shot nothing. Ask the doctor that did the autopsy. They didn't find one prick hole in him. Didn't find one mark or anything. That's the truth. If you can ever get the autopsy report, it'll verify it right there. They didn't find one puncture hole on him, or one track or anything. It was on the news, you know, and I said, I had a feeling, no, this was it. You know, the other ones were promotional deals. You know, you can tell. And so some guy downstairs starts screaming out, "Jimmy's there." And another guy says, "Shut up. His brother's right upstairs." So then my name came over loudspeaker, and I knew it was true then. I said, "Leon Hendricks, 562391, report to the chaplain." And that was it. And I called my dad up, and he tried to keep me cheerful and start laughing and joking about it. That's the way he is, you know. They let me out of prison right after that because the guy that I lived with before, he had became the chairman of the board of the parole and probation or something. You know, the rich guy, that first foster home. And so he wrote a big old report and stuff like that and said, you know, and stuff. So they let me out of prison. It was a choice of going to prison or going to the army, back to the army. Jimmy's a link to eternal life for me. You know, he set me on the course to search. You know, if I hadn't heard his music, I would never search. I said, yeah, I believe in God. You know, big deal. He loves everybody. You know, he'll forgive me for whatever I do and stuff like that. You know, it's the same old lie that's been told for ages. You're all right. You'll be cool. You know, you'll be all right. Alcohol and barbiturates just don't mix. The thing of it is that he died from suffocation, according to the autopsy report. Okay, that means congested. You know, he was congested in the throat, which could have been alleviated by a number of different methods. See, we don't really know the clear story about that altogether right now. But I know one thing: he didn't commit no suicide.
On October 1st, friends and family, including musicians Johnny Winter and Miles Davis, gathered at Seattle's Dunlap Baptist Church for a dignified and somber service. Noel grimly recounts, "They had his body laid out in a coffin, and we had to walk past it. I couldn't look. Mitch and I were both crying and held hands. They should have buried his white Fender guitar with him. It was his favorite." After Hendricks was laid to rest at Greenwood Cemetery in nearby Renton, his musical peers decided to grant him a wish that he had often spoken of. "I tell you," said Hendricks, "when I die, I'm not going to have a funeral. I'm going to have a jam session. I want people to just play my music, go wild, and freak out." Jerry Stickles, Jimmy's longtime road manager and personal assistant, remembers, "We rented a hall and got a few instruments, and the musicians got up and jammed. We had a good party. It was the way he would have wanted it. We gave him a good send-off."
There were so many limousines. There must have been 100 limousines. Every time a limousine pulled up, some weird dude got out. You know, the first guy I saw was Johnny Winter. He was there. Or was it Edgar? I don't. You know, they looked the same. Okay, I don't know. But that's how it was. You know, limousine after limousine pulled up, and all kind of people got out. You couldn't tell who they were or nothing like that. Because they all had hippie clothes on. You know, patched boots and, you know, velvet coats and stuff like that, you know. So I don't really know who was all there. I just know there was a bunch of them there.
In the wake of his death, the seemingly inevitable tawdry exploitation spilled forth. The ugly, extended battle over the multi-million-dollar Hendricks estate, the avalanche of crap bootlegs that flooded the market, the gluttonous tabloid feast of grisly speculation over Jimmy's demise, blaming everything from a heroin overdose to an assassination plot and sensational hints of suicide. Much was made of Jimmy's last poem, written the night he died. Titled The Story of Life, the final lines read, The story of life is quicker than the wink of an eye. The story of love is hello and goodbye, until we meet again. Jimmy's suicide note, Eric Burden called it. Leon Hendricks gruffly countered, "That's no death poem, man. It's a life poem." Many people don't realize that Paul McCartney was actually very good friends with Hendricks. Here he reminisces about his old mate with the late blues legend Alexis Corner.
Nothing's going to change my opinion. I saw him. Yeah. And I know a lot of people now seeing some of those crappy films that were made of him on a real off day where he's obviously bombed out of his skull and it's not a good night for him. No one ever happened to take really decent film of him just sitting around a hotel room, which would have shown all the young cats who think, "Yeah, he's not such hot shit." When I say, like, I think he's probably the best, certainly that I've heard, just because he sort of got most into the pouch.
He could make me cry, Hendrix. I was playing over some Hendrix yesterday.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Some people would say, well, so big deal, you know, you've just got nostalgia for an old thing, and he really wasn't that good, you know what I mean? Watching films like Rainbow Thingy, and they think, yeah, because that's all they got to go on. But I say, it's not true, no matter what opinion now says, or whatever it says. But, you know, still, the fact remains that there he was, and there people have been turned on by him, just pure talent.
Finally, Jimmy's brother Leon closes out this remembrance of Jimi Hendrix with his own touching, compassionate memorial.
Jimmy always changed. See, Jimmy, the music he played then was music he played then, you know. But Jimi Hendrix, I'm telling you, boy, if he would have stuck around, boy, there'd be some new music on the scene now, just like it was when he first came out. Like my dad, they go out to the grave and they put flowers on it and stuff. My dad says, "Did you go to the grave?" I said, "Oh no, it's Jimmy's birthday." So I says, "You don't have to go out to the." I said, "Jimmy's everywhere. Turn the radio on." You know, I said, "Go play your records." I said, "But forget the grave." You know, I says, "Big deal. You know, every time you go out there, you see a bunch of roaches and cigarette butts all over it. You know, beer bottles and stuff like that. You know, I'm not getting down on the kids that go out there, but see, they just don't have anything else. You know, they don't have anything to fill up their lives. You know, like we had a long time ago. You know, we were fresh. We had life to experience, and you know, now everybody cuts down everybody. You know, they don't want you to do anything. You know. You can't be no greater than his music. Turn his music on the radio right there. You want to memorialize Jimmy? He's already made his memorial. You know, listen to his music. You know, that goes across the air. Millions of people hear it in every country.
Over 2 decades later, the fascination continues. Had he lived, where would Hendrix be today? Fetid rock dinosaur or Pied Piper of musical change? Evidence points to the latter, for in one brief lifetime this brilliant young artist virtually reinvented the blues, founded psychedelic funk, and wandered boldly onto the cutting edge of an unprecedented jazz-classical rock fusion. Perhaps in the end, like Joplin and Morrison, Jimi Hendrix was but a time traveler on a brief glowing stop in the watershed 60s. "He's gone through like a fireball without knowing it," Dylan once said. Jimmy himself perhaps pointed to his own humble epithet when he said, "Me, the world's greatest guitar player? That's silly. I'm just a messenger from God. Forget my name. My name is nothing but a distraction. Remember it as only a handshake." So many years later, the world is still fondly remembering. Moments after the Jimi Hendrix Experience reduced the stage to ashes at the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967, it was clear Jimmy's incendiary guitar playing had finally converted the American audience to his electric vision, and it had been a long time coming. James Marshall Hendrix was born in Seattle, Washington on November 27, 1942. Jimmy first took up the guitar in his early teens, religiously jamming to blues heroes Muddy Waters and Robert Johnson. He played in local bands until dropping out of high school and joining the Army, where he formed the King Casuals, a group he remained with after his discharge in 1962, when he suffered injuries in a parachute drop. For the next 4 years, Jimmy cut his teeth backing the likes of Little Richard, Sam Cooke, and Curtis Mayfield, until forming Jimmy James and the Blue Flames. In July of 1966, while jamming in Greenwich Village, Jimmy's sensational act caught the attention of Chaz Chandler, then bassist for British Invasion Biggie's The Animals. Chandler convinced Jimmy to move to England and try his luck there. Employing the talents of session-men bassist Noel Redding and drummer Mitch Mitchell, the Jimi Hendrix Experience debuted at the Paris Olympia. Jimmy was an instant star. His flamboyant, fuzz-driven, feedback-laced, psychedelic reinterpretation of the blues pushed the limits of rock and dazzled English audiences. Jimmy's incredible prowess made immediate fans of London luminaries Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, John Lennon, and Paul McCartney, who regularly made the scene to witness the Experience's outrageous shows. Hendrix had truly conquered England, and it was now time to return to America and convert its blossoming youth culture. The Monterey Pop Festival in June of 1967 was set to be rock and roll's ultimate showcase and the virtual centerpiece of the Summer of Love. At Paul McCartney's insistence, the Experience immediately was booked to play. Hitting the stage after a breathy introduction by Rolling Stone Brian Jones, the Experience went into overdrive. Jimmy assaulted, humped, stroked, caressed, and ritually set his guitar on fire, leaving the audience astounded, aghast, and ultimately believers. Jimmy took the States by storm, finding huge success with such hits as Purple Haze and The Wind Cries Mary. Albums Are You Experiencing